Kubernetes for beginners. So today's topic is pods. Before moving into the pods, what is Kubernetes? Why we require? So Kubernetes is mainly used for building and managing the containerized applications in an automated fashion. So what is pod here? Pod is nothing but the smallest object that we create in the Kubernetes. So basics of pod we will discuss, and types of pod and top level fields of pod YAML and init with multi-container pods with the real world examples with the demo I'll explain. So pod YAML, it is nothing but the smallest object that you create in a Kubernetes. Okay, so the smallest object you create in Kubernetes. Types of pods in the sense a pod can have the single container and multiple container. So we can say pod can have two types of pods, that is single container pod then multi-container pod. So single container pod can have only one container, that is single image, and multi-container pod which will have the multi-container pod with a single image. I will give you the simple demo. Suppose I was directly going with this, and do not worry about this, and we will explain with the demo. Under spec we need to have the containers. Okay, containers. Under this we have only one name, that is suppose I have njnx container and image was njnx. Okay, this is the single container, so we can say single container pod. Single container pod. Likewise we have one more container, that is multi-container pod. So we can take the same example, multi-container pod. We have two images with two containers. I can give Redis and image was Redis. Okay, this is the multi-container pod, we can say. So the simple and easy to understand. I will give you the complete YAML file for the single container and multi-container with the demo. Now you can understand this, what is spec and what is containers. I will show you with the demo wise. And we have two types of pods, single and multi-container. So what are the fields, attributes? Top level fields or attributes. Okay, so we have top level fields, that is for API version, you can say. So this is the version of the Kubernetes API we are using to create the pod. Okay, now the second attribute was kind. So in Kubernetes there are multiple objects like deployments, config maps, secrets, pods. So likewise, what type of object you are trying to create? Suppose if it is a pod, we can say pod. Suppose is it a deployment, we can say deployment. Likewise, and metadata. So this is the one more kind of attribute, that is top level attribute, API version, kind, metadata, then finally spec. Okay, these are the top level attributes. Under metadata we can specify the labels, that is the naming conventions, whatever we can give for the pods, and we can use the namespaces, and for the matching label also we can provide under the metadata. And we can see this spec. I can give you these examples. So under spec we can have the containers names with images and commands, and as well as we can say some other configuration like commands with special permissions like resource limits and all, we can say under the containers and within the resource request limits. So these are the top level fields for the pod. So init with multi-container. So why init containers and multi-containers are, what are the difference? And so init containers are specialized containers which will have the init containers attribute. Okay, so which will have the init containers attribute. Under that we need to provide the names of that. So likewise what we provided the containers under containers here, the same way we need to provide the under name and image. So those are the specialized containers which will start before your main container application will run. That means so these are the containers, right? Suppose there are two containers, okay, before that it will start the init containers. So suppose you can say download configuration, download config, I can say this is just a name, okay, not worry about this, but this is the actual name I'm giving this as a name, not worry about it. So this will start first, and once it is completed then it will go with the main containers, okay. That is the init containers and multi containers we already discussed here, and now we can use the demo with real world examples, so you can have a thorough understanding on this. So I will open my terminal. So before moving on to the practical session, you need to check out this, how you can install the minikube for your Mac. So you can just simply search for, you can open YouTube. So you can simply type Kubernetes for Mac. So you will find the video here. So this is the video which will be updated of Code with Chandra. So you can find this one, and this is easy installation guide for to set up the minikube at the step by step. And once you completed this minikube setup, so you can open your terminal, start with minikube, start. It will start the minikube. So I will show you that also. So you can see this Docker desktop here. You can see this minikube is starting. Now wait for a second and we will try to update this. Okay, now minikube is configured with the default namespace by default. Okay, now you can try to get clear, try to get the nodes if it is ready or not. You can check by, so single node minikube cluster is ready. Now you can start practicing. So before moving on to this, I will show you the way. There are two ways to create the pod via the command line utility, that is without YAML file or with YAML file. So I will show you with the YAML file first. Vi, so my pod.yml. Okay, this will open the VI editor. So if you are not sure about what is VI editor, I have the updated playlist for the Linux as well in my YouTube channel Code with Chandra. You can find it there. So now it will open the file. So by default it was there, so I will remove all this content. Okay, no. So I can remove all this content. So once you gone through the basics of a pod, you will try to update here. So okay, I'm using this API version v1. This is the Kubernetes version, and kind is, what is the kind here? Pod. Okay, P capital, that make sure P is capital, and metadata, right? Under metadata we can say name. So this is the YAML syntaxes. You need to keep two spaces. Okay, if it is any sub label is there or sub topic is there, you can use this two spaces, then only it will identify as a YAML file, otherwise you will get the syntax error. Name I can say my pod. Okay, now I can move with the spec. Under that containers. So what containers we used here? Name. I will give you this. So what are the containers we have used? NGINX container. You can use the same as it is. Okay, NGINX container and NGINX. nginx container and the image was nginx. Okay, this is the single container pod. So we'll try to execute this, save it. If you want to save this file, escape :wq. Okay, now if you want to verify this file, you can use vi cat or v cat command. It will show you the what are the content available on the pod. Okay, my pod.yaml. Okay, now you can see this is the pod yaml, and you can try to execute with the kubectl command, create -f my pod.yaml. See, pod.yaml was created. So what are the nginx container, right? We have that. You can see this, what are the containers here. So you didn't see any containers here. If you open it, this is the configuration for the minikube. Not worry about it, you can go through this. Try to get the parts with the kubectl get parts. So commands you can note it down. This is for creating the part if you have ready with the YAML file. So once it is executed, then you can try to get the parts. You will get the, so pod, my pod was running. This is the single container pod. Suppose I want to execute with the two pods, you can try to edit those element with the kubectl. You can clearly observe this. I am using this directly, create get pods and edit pod. I am also using kubectl edit pod. What is the pod name here? My pod. Okay, try to edit here. You can edit the image, nginx image name is nginx container containers. We can add one more file here under container section, -name redis container. What is the image? Redis. Okay, okay, now save it. So it is not allowing, so we need to delete that file and you have to create. Okay, so once the pod is created, it is not allowing in Kubernetes, it will not allow. So if you want, you can try to delete that. Okay, cancelled. No valid changes are applicable. What you will do here first, kubectl delete pod my pod. Okay, so it is trying to delete the pod. See, pod deleted from default namespace. Try to clear this. Now you can try to get the pods, get pods. So no resources available. Now try to edit the pod, vi my pod.yaml. So here you can update one more container. Name of the container redis. You can see, for your reference I am giving the container, otherwise it is not required. And image was redis. So we have two containers ready, and now we'll try to save it and execute with the help of kubectl create -f my pod.yaml. So it was try to created the pod, my pod. Now you can try to get the pods. You will get the two pods with redis and nginx. It will get pods. It is waiting, and so decide and ready. So if you want to check the logs of this pod, how these are creating internally, kubectl describe pod my pod. Okay, now we will see the list of events. Under event section you will see this. So successfully assigned the default my pod to minikube and pulling the image nginx. It will pull the image from the docker hub. So created the container, nginx container was created. Now it is pulling the image redis image. Again you can see, so it is still pulling the image redis. So wait for a while, it will show you. Once it is ready, get pods. 2 by 2 running. Now you can see this Redis started also. I will show you that also. See here. First one, pulling the image Redis and successfully pulled and created the container and started the container. These are the steps which involved internally before creating the containers. This is the clean informative. Now kubectl get pods. See, 2 by 2 are running. Okay, Redis pod. And so, but actually you will not create the pods manually in Kubernetes. So it is the wrong way, because for beginners I'm explaining this, but you do not create the pods manually, but the deployment will create the pod for you. In upcoming sessions I will show you how to create the deployment. Now we have seen one way to create the pod using the YAML with a single container pod and multi-container pod. Now we will create the single container pod using the command line interface using the kubectl run nginx pod hyphen image equal to nginx. So this will simply create the nginx pod, okay, without using the YAML file. This is the simplest one. See, pod nginx pod was created. So how easy it was. Kubectl get pods. See, nginx pod was created 9 seconds ago. Hope you got this, and we'll say one more, that is init containers. I will show you one more file, init container.yml. So what is init containers, you know? So init containers are specialized containers. It will start before your main containers will start. Okay, API version kind is pod metadata. Under metadata you can specify the name of the pod. Here you can specify the name of the pod. I can say init pod. You can use naming conventions. Under spec, in spec we can specify the init containers. This is very important. So why we use init containers, you know, if any, before your application is starting, check the database is up to the mark. That means database is started to recover the any issues before starting your application. This is very important. That means your application is ready before making any request. Okay, either database or front end or back end. Okay, now we can use the name in conventions. If a name nginx, giving it is a name. Okay, and the image was nginx container nginx init, I can say. Now we'll move on to the main containers. Main containers, you know, under containers hyphen name Redis image was Redis. So we have init containers one and main container is one. Before running the Redis container, the init container will complete, then only it will move on to the Redis container. Save it. Now check the file content. So this is the file content we have. Now we will try to execute kubectl create -f init container.yml. Now I'm hitting this. So here is the pod was created, but actually the internal things will happen while describing. We'll look into the logs. Kubectl describe pod init pod. So why I'm giving this init pod, while creating the pod we are given the name, right? Init pod, those name you need to provide it here. And the pod type of the object you are trying to describe, and a describe command with the kubectl. We'll see the logs. So pulling the image, successfully pull the images, and here it is the nginx container. That is the init container. Okay, created container is nginx init. Now we will try to get the pods. Kubectl get pods. See here, it is still under the init stage. Okay, so once it is ready, then only it will move on to the next step, otherwise it will not be running. So this is the examples of, here is the summary. So what is pod? The smallest object you create in the Kubernetes namespace. And why types of pods? Two types, single and multi container. And this sample code base I have given, and top level attributes of the pod, and init its multi container pods. Examples with the demo I have shown you. This is the simplest and crash course for beginners, and they can easily understand what I have given. Okay, these are the today's lecture, and I hope you got this. And if you have any questions regarding the pods, and you can comment it below in my channel so that I can clarify. And if you have any suggestions or comments, so, and I request everyone to check out the videos regularly, otherwise you will not catch up things properly. And this is the, if you want code base, you can see this, my GitHub code base is there, so you can go through this code base as well. So I have given you the pods, replica set, controller, namespace, deployments, everything I have given. You can clone this and you can try to work out on this. So I will be explaining the next video on other topics as well, so you don't miss it, and subscribe now and get ready for 30-day competition. We'll summarize the commands what we used to create. So here, this is the summary commands. Kubectl create my -f my app.yaml. So this will create the Kubernetes pod with the YAML file. Okay, now without YAML file, kubectl run nginx pod -image equal to nginx. So this will create the pod without YAML file using the command line interface, kubectl command line interface. Now we can kubectl describe. So before moving to the describe, get pods. So it will list out the pods which are available and currently running in Kubernetes Minikube. Okay, now the next one is kubectl describe pod name, I can say. Okay, my pod, this is the name of the pod. Okay, pod name. Okay, so now we can try to get one more, that is delete pod my pod. So this is also same pod name. I can completely copy this, so we'll completely remove the pod from the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so last one we missed it, and now we will show you that one also. Kubectl delete pod. What are those pods? My pod. So it will create the my pod from the Minikube. So now it was deleted. And one more also is there. You want to find more on under which node it is assigned, you can use kubectl get pods -o wide. So you can copy this, so it will list out pods assigned to which node. You can clear this. See here, so it will give you the more detailed about the IP of that pod and the node, which is node assigned to which node it is assigned, and nominated node and readiness gates. So okay, these are the more detail about the pods. So that's all for now.